welcome everyone to the sixth and final event in the 2025-2026 Seavey reading series. And it's St. Patrick's Day too. So to set the mood, I've chosen a bit of prose by James Joyce. When the book club met on Sunday night to discuss our visiting author's work, everyone took turns reading aloud, and it was really lovely. It was a really nice break from reading the news, for example. It reminded me of graduate school when Silas and I used to have a read aloud of Ulysses, and we had this professor who would come and join us, and it was just, it was really fun to read these poems aloud. So Joyce's novel Ulysses is an epic novel, and our visiting writer's book is an epic book of poetry. So I'm going to read just a few lines from Ulysses by James Joyce. It's when our hero, Leopold Bloom, is musing on a Dublin newspaper. Nature notes, cartoons, Phil Blake's weekly Pat and Bolt story, Uncle Toby's page for Tiny Tots, Country Bumpkin's queries. Dear Mr. Editor, what is a good cure for flatulence? I'd like that part. Learn a lot teaching others. The personal note, MAP, mainly all pictures. Shapely bathers on Golden Strand, world's biggest balloon, double marriage of sisters celebrated, 2 bridegrooms laughing heartily at each other. Cuprani, too, printer, more Irish than the Irish. That's a little occasional prose. And my name is Catherine Dent, and as the director of Susquehanna University's Writers Institute, tonight I'm going to shake it up a little bit. I always thank the administrators, faculty, staff, students, alumni, donors, and community members who make the Seavey Reading Series possible. We are still grateful to all of you. But on this, our final event of the season, I'm turning our attention to a different crowd. All you students who read books by visiting writers this year, thank you. We deeply believe in this act of imagination, empathy, and connection. We hope you'll always cherish this experience of meeting authors and hearing their voices in this space. Faculty and staff and administrators who taught and promoted and sold and shared the books, thank you for being part of the continuum of art and literature. We appreciate your work. I hope you've been challenged and enriched by conversations around these works. Homer, DJ Ernst, SU alum and beloved bookseller of Selinsgrove, thank you for providing books to our community for over 50 years. Your shop on Market Street, the home away from home you've provided to writers and readers, is already missed. Everyone should get out to the Final Chapter bookstore retirement sale at the Freeburg Community Center 2 Saturdays from today, March 28th. All other alumni friends and community members, sláinte. Good health and good wishes. Cheers. Let's look forward to the road ahead. And now I get to rave about the student who will introduce our guest. Elle Virgilio is a senior, a creative writing and publishing and editing double major, a French minor, and part of the honors program. Elle has participated in Fuse and SU Slam for all 4 years and currently holds the office of secretary in both clubs. They work as a writing tutor and a French tutor at the Center for Academic Success. Last summer, Elle spent a month in southern France living with a French host family. Elle translated day-to-day life for their American housemates with patience and good humor, while studying works by the artist Jean Daret and other period paintings at the Musée Granet in Aix-en-Provence. Out of that experience, Elle wrote a soul-searching work of historical fiction that is now their honors project, titled Auto-Portrait. After workshopping the story in class with a Porva Bradshaw Metal, Elle researched the tradition and practice of self-translation under the guidance of Sophie Burer and myself. The Writers Institute faculty chose the English version of Elle's story as this year's fiction submission for AWP's Intro Journals project, and Elle's plan is to seek publication for the French version in dual language journals. Along with writing fiction, Elle is a talented poet who has published work with Patchwork Press and the online blog of Fifth Wheel Press, and has poetry and prose forthcoming in Rivercraft, as well as flash fiction in Sanctuary magazine. Please join me in welcoming Elle Virgilio to the stage.
Tonight, I have the honor of introducing poet and critic Alan Gilbert. Gilbert is the author of 4 books of poetry: Late in the Antenna Fields, published in 2011, The Treatment of Monuments, published in 2012, and 2 editions of The Everyday Life of Design, published in 2020 and 2024, respectively, as well as a collection of essays, articles, and reviews titled Another Future: Poetry and Art in a Postmodern Twilight. His poetry has appeared in numerous publications, including Boston Review, Fence, and Denver Quarterly, and his art writing has appeared in publications such as Art Forum and Modern Painters. He has taught at Sarah Lawrence College, Wesleyan University, School of Visual Arts, Parsons the New School for Design, Cooper Union, and the Naropa University Summer Writing Program, and is currently an adjunct associate professor in Columbia University's MFA Writing Program, as well as the web editor of Baugh Magazine. Gilbert is the recipient of a 2006 Creative Capital Foundation Award for Innovative Literature, a 2009 New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowship in Poetry, and a 2019 Creative Capital Andy Warhol Foundation Arts Writers Grant. The art of linking things that seem unrelated is a core feature of Gilbert's poetry. In faculty interview for Columbia University, Gilbert describes coming to poetry first through the lyricism of alternative and rap music, then through Charles Baudelaire and other French symbolist poets. This art, I find, makes his work increasingly meaningful the more one reads it. For about the past month, I've been walking around with The Treatment of Monuments in my backpack, half to read and half in an effort to have it on hand in case one of the students in the class I TA for needed to borrow it. The book seemed to peer over my shoulder at classrooms and my social media feed with lines like these from Relative Heat Index. Illiteracy is a discourse. The radiator only heats the front half of the room. The car bomb's engine was found on a nearby balcony. Any questions? I devoured The Treatment of Monuments in one sitting, as a reviewer on the back suggests. The more I sat with it, both literally and metaphorically, the more I felt that the whole world had somehow been condensed into it. But this feeling I got from The Treatment of Monuments was only a taste of what I would find in The Everyday Life of Design. An about 300-page project, sometimes described as an epic poem, The Everyday Life of Design is a kaleidoscopic work that brings together everything from life and death and war and climate catastrophe to box office hits and prescription drugs and likes on Facebook and getting blocked on social media by your dentist. I started the book at the beginning of break, then mistakenly left it in my dorm room when I drove to a literary conference, where every morning on the way to a coffee shop, we passed a news ticker displaying headlines about all the war in the world. I posted photos of books and jellyfish to Instagram and came back to campus, where I picked up The Everyday Life of Design again to read and go long. Yet once the ocean's warm, it's all over, as the jellyfish plot their dominion, and in a later stanza, we tried to stop the violence, but it was everywhere. These images run together with food court trash and squirrels in the yard, and so become just as ordinary. Gilbert embraces everyday disasters, things on our minds and out of our control as we move through life one day at a time. Yet in the midst of all this mundane catastrophe, Gilbert reminds us, there's an uninvited guest called Hope who lounges on the couch watching TV all day and eats the remaining food in a refrigerator that's periodically lapped by a rippling wake. Please join me in welcoming Alan Gilbert to the stage.
Thank you so much, Elle. That was amazing. One of the best introductions I've ever received. Appreciate what you pulled out of there in terms of things being connected and the numbness to the violence in this world. And your glasses found in the super water. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to Carla and Glenn and Monica and Catherine and Silas. Specifically for inviting me, and also new faculty. Nice to meet you, and thank you for having me and hosting me. Thank you all for coming tonight to hear this reading. I've known about the Writers Institute for about a decade, and I just have such fondness and admiration for what you all are doing here. As I mentioned, I've adjuncted in a number of places, and you have something very special and unique in your locale here. And I hope you can find also know that this is an audience, well, I know that as part of your degree, you have to work in all three genres. So tonight I thought I would half read poetry and half read nonfiction. So I thought I would read from the Everyday Life of Design for about 15 minutes. And then I have a very recently finished essay on the French artist Claudia Rankine that I thought I would read for about 15 minutes from. So regular reading length, but divided in two parts. I think we're allowed to do a Q&A if that interests you afterwards. And if not, we can talk with people outside after the reading. And I'm around for the next couple of days, so if you have things you want to talk about, please come find me. I'll be on campus all day tomorrow and on Thursday. Thank you very much again for hosting me. So this is an ongoing epic poem. We can or cannot talk about what an epic poem might be in the 21st century, but this is the second version of it. So it's a revised, expanded version of the one that was published in 2000, and this one came out a couple years ago. I thought I should mention, I'm going to read 15 minutes, prose for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to finish, just to make sure it comes back to poetry, I'm going to finish with one very new poem. And I'll start with the first poem in the book, which is, in some ways, the most hopeful poem in the book, because I find that sometimes it's easier to start with hope than to end with it. Time capsule. Sound is good in the back? Yeah, I don't need to move the mic, right? We're good. Thank you. Time capsule. We wait for the medicine to take effect when everything is at capacity, like an emotional spending spree, all swollen heart and empty pockets. We made a chair from some sticks in the box we used to move the dishes, but please, just take it all away. We need to leave a little land for the fox to roam. One noise drowns out another as voices get lost in the transmission lost in the night lost in you. How did we get so restless? Then one bird came back, and we were grateful. A sparrow's tiny feet clutching a thin branch. We knew the end hadn't arrived just yet. A new hope. The rain patters like it's taking a walk, except I'm all wet, no matter what the weather. My dream song chews on aluminum foil, but chokes on flu shots at the office. Money doesn't want to help the sick because it's another kind of disease. Just don't leave me with the fever, favor, father. They say the best jobs are at the fulfillment center following robots around, yet where's the reason in things? I paint the tree leaves green to cover up the scarring as the lights flicker off in the middle of a tunnel. The narratives entrap us, but we still have so many emails to send, so many wounds to suture beneath a slow leak in the ceiling where the disco love globe used to spin. We made 2 meals for $5 and left the dishes in the sink like the lookout tower on Sourdough Mountain, because only you can prevent forest fires. Unless, of course, you can't. I know the feeling. There are also medals for being bad, and hair in the drain is the least of our worries. We looked for a little quiet in an empty room, only to end up asking, where did everybody go? I took the Bigfoot costume to the laundry with sweaty sickbed sheets, avoiding the cops and paparazzi, but not the ice cream truck jingle on repeat and OCD. When the world feels like it's getting faster, I remember how you passed the gravy. For that, I might have to wait for hours. Maybe that's why the novel is a good form for telling stories. The dolphins don't care about us, but we've got an opinion on almost everything, including a bet on the over-under after making wildly bad decisions. Some take years to dig out from, while others follow you around like a dog, mistaking a firefly for a dumpster. That's why I cook barbecue with more lighter fluid than coals, because it makes the signs shine brighter. A wheelchair silently rolls across the linoleum, and you can't put your hand up to stop it. The last time I felt such a disturbance in the force, I was at Sizzler, surrounded by mixed drinks and bent steak knives. An alarm clock above the bar keeps a different time. Even back then, I didn't want to go home. Naming the constellations. The plumber came for the clog while I was busy sneezing on my sleeve and crushing ice cubes in the blender with a headache, which means that ball of grease and wet wipes will have to stay lodged between the preschool and the sewer, like feeling short of breath when someone starts screaming. That's when I get out my wayward map of the stars, away from all the madness at home, except its cry is lodged in my soul like a squirrel in its biggest nut, as birds crisscross a pale blue sky called wonder, my face to the sun today, but only for a while. Later, we'll make a sandwich and push our clothes to the laundromat with one of those folding metal carts grannies find convenient, left rear wheel wobbling the whole way, even in reverse when we didn't think we'd make it. We still haven't. Or maybe we embarrassed ourselves on Facebook despite getting all those likes. Don't troll me when I can do it myself. Who's in charge here anyway? The houses look vacant, but that's my mess in the other room next to the empty planter and tray tables we balanced on our knees while watching TV, because sometimes you hear the song best when firmly tied to the mast. So stop me if you've heard this one before. I'm born in the world's figment, friend of the feather. I'm trying to stay warm, trying to get this donkey to wear a hat after it ate my only shrub, and it was a nice one. A statement followed by a description. The only paradise is here on Earth, although right now it looks like a landfill, especially after what that zombie dragon did to the wall. Whose memories are these? I'm trying to make it cohere, except corduroy is more of a fall fabric, and the flower beds aren't speaking to me again, although other creatures hear them, because fungus is as fungus does. I should read more fiction, but it all feels that way. At least I've got a strong online presence, even when my dentist blocked me after I exclaimed, "Don't hate the player, hate the game." Talk about awkward. Now it's the one big event of the year as a crowd gathers around the dunk tank during a drought. With my tax refund, I bought a backpack filled with trash bags to carry toward a new beginning, now or later, but the horizon doesn't extend much beyond this block. With its chronic illness, its emphysema, it doesn't want to get out of bed. A generator hums behind the Walmart where skateboarders rarely stick their tricks, decks clattering across the asphalt like this, while I was out front counting the abandoned cars. There's no such thing as a clean biscuit or a weapon built for peace. One sound drowns out another one and so on, but the light is fading from this world. The Pizza Hut salad bar ran out of croutons, which makes the teenagers grumpy. You call it carbo loading, I call it dinner. Yet when it's time to join the fire brigade, don't worry, I'll be the first one down the pole, or maybe the rain will put it out. Thank you. This one's called Selfie in a Convex Mirror, and it's in two parts. 1. It was warm in the sun, but I'm not a lizard humming winter like a jingle. Instead, we slipped the dishes in bubble wrap and sucked from the rotisserie asking, "Are those jeggings?" while ducking a drunken roundhouse. The NSA is now spying for the banks, but they won't find my collection of melted candy bars hidden beneath the mattress. I'm saving them to use as sticky paddles when the ice caps melt, or as gold medals awarded at the mental velodrome in Atlantis. In other words, we're doomed, but I hold out hope for creative solutions. I'm going under, nose plugs at the ready after misplacing the car keys and photobombing the Panda Bear webcam. Collapsing new buildings is one translation, though you gotta have friends before you can have frenemies. The cutthroat bingo players with a single number on their cards as azalea bushes blaze sapphire blue outside the cafeteria. I stuck my whole head in them, and then in your book about linens, which includes a special section on the rags used to wipe down deli counters. Talk about visceral. Except I got a tattoo in my inner ear, and the only word I can hear is jackhammer, even if a story isn't always in the telling. Besides, how much is there really to say about a new puppy? I wrote this poem on my phone before throwing it in the toilet, but my head hurts too much to do the math. This isn't a footnote. It's a leather machine, kind of punky, with ripped spandex and smelling of Jergens. Yet eventually the creatures close in. 2. We rattle the locks on the door and bring the sergeant to his knees, saluting the ultimate viscosity of it all on his way down. The luckier ones get to sneak in a pirouette or fear fungos while a marching band tramples the grass and moves the goalposts whenever we're not looking. I could take a pill for that, cry out to the dark lake with its crackling along the wire, or a skip it J. Crew filibuster that leaves a dent on the tray table, jostling my ribcage on the trash my mom washes. No wonder I'm terrified of the oral surgeon and the stock boys taking their talents to the stockyards downwind from school. I set off the fire alarm every time I cook, watching the luggage tossed into the ship's wake, saying, I'm so out of here, or maybe just distracted for a minute, because the only life I love is this one. Yet sometimes things end badly and never get repaired. This poem is one example. Thank God, though, for Dunkin' Donuts where my wife works. There's a difference between nonlinear and simply scattered. I whacked at it for a while with a fish head, meat still sticking to the bones, until we removed it with our fingers as street sweepers very slowly trail the last marathoner to finish. You could call the self-portrait a series of minor abrasions, or you could read it without a mic, and by dog you could be referring to a person. The house is set off from the road, being swallowed by the desert, as the afternoon light shines more sideways, like a constriction in the throat of the sky, even though it's our turn to speak. Thank you. A few more. This one's a little darker. Fight or flight. Spills make the steps slippery in front of the Dollar Tree, where we buy pear-scented shampoo and mayonnaise, then post hashtag goals to Twitter, because I'm a total bargain while listening to the air traffic controller tell jokes all day. Yet every loss wants company, like the ghost riders ready to burn beneath metal palm trees hot to the touch from a noon sun baking adobe and bones. That weeping is called history, a ship with black sails and slaughter, now preparing to depart for other worlds until even the stars are contaminated by us, already are. Incoming is our mantra, even if it's by subtle degrees, watching muddy paws and the brutality of a system chewing through entire species. We traveled so far from home that it didn't exist anymore, but you still make the bed each morning, brushing last night's cookie crumbs onto the floor while asking, why do I feel so alone on the bayou? There are gardens we can't see. We listen for the transmission, although sometimes it's only static or a lip bruised on a gravy ladle used for digging tomorrow's grave. I never heard the police cruiser coming with its perpetual bad hair day, its guns blazing. First the weather report, then the traffic report, but always the crinkly rustle of plastic bags caught in the trees like nests for whatever comes after the human in its stomach pump, after us. Gunboats secure the tea, although now they're drones cruising silently over the landscape like a hawk that I read about or saw in HD, while a soothing voiceover narrates the tale of the field mouse gingerly hopping through patchy ice and snow. We carved our initials under an iron bridge after driving our car into a ditch with its row of little turtles. It made for a good Instagram photo, because Facebook is depressing. No one likes pickles more than my dad in a tank top, but I'll stick to thermals tight around the ankles next to my halo. There's really so much more to say beyond the nibble, especially when you're starting at the edge of a cracker while someone knocks at the door with a branding iron and pink wig, talking about the children and their gods. On the day of the great jubilee, all debts will be erased. In the meantime, I activated my credit card after trading a toothbrush for lunch money and a gesundheit tickling my throat with a broom. The circumstances of our lives are just short of crushed, like the one I used to have on you. No more tangled wishes, no more dirty collars. Dinner was a comedy of errors scraped into the sink, and you were mistaken to name it meatloaf. Today the hole got covered instead of filled, but that's not fixing it, or the noises it makes at night when the music ceases. Thank you. So obviously there's a lot of references in these poems, and I don't normally explain them. It's not really kind of the point of them, but this one needs to be explained because it comes at the end, and it might be a generational thing as well. And also I tell my students, like, don't start a poem or end a poem with something you have to Google. Like, I don't mind if I don't know what something is in the middle of the poem, right? I can Google that, I can figure it out. But like starting a poem with something, that you're not sure what that is, or ending it with you're not sure what that is, I kind of discouraged. So this poem ends with a reference to the video game Frogger. That's common knowledge. Okay, I don't know. I mean, I remember it like as a little kid, not little kid. I remember it as like a arcade game stick. All right, so I don't need to explain Frogger. There's also you'll probably capture the Evanescence line from Bring Me to Life. Splashes and plops. The view through the telescope is the same as the microscope when everything splinters into light. Until then, I'll need to purchase inner ear insurance after I got the wobbles one stanza at a time. Reddit says that only old people eat Big Newtons, and I didn't know if this was true or if Crimea will eventually be swallowed by the sea, but the aging hippies across the street seem harmless. They even let me borrow their Subaru in a chop I wiped clean on my jeans before uprooting tubers while the engine block took hours to cool from driving around all day in the heat. You've got the EMT on speed dial after a bidet malfunctioned at the space station on a journey to explore another planet, the way an amateur motocross team treats soft earthen berms. In other words, to destroy it. That's the anti-Elon Musk colonize the world line. I can also be more specific, although I'm not going to run to retrieve the ingredients with this toothache that super glue isn't fixing. Is there a point to this story? Nothing more. I like splashing in the puddle with the other birds. Do you think you're better off alone? Save me from the nothing I've become. Rain is falling again today, and you are still so far away as the quiet amplifies once the chainsaw stops chewing. I've almost graduated from college, but what's the rush? I made a tumbler of tumbleweeds, but no one found it funny. It's okay to lay your burden down for a moment. The keys are on the counter. Sometimes I just need a hug and a burrito. Maybe Mean Joe Green's jersey to go with a Coke. I am a clutter. So give me a paper towel for the disaster and I'll make a sale with it and get as far as last call sitting on a bar stool at the nearest Fuddruckers and wearing a disposable mask like a smudge. Don't tell me I can do better while the juggled meat cleavers clatter on the kitchen tiles. Like Frogger, I choose the log. And the last poem I'll read right now is called Coming to America. I saw the land, and then it vanished in a fog of history and war as the words warped in the middle and also around the edges, as if the forests were only there to drive through, or we took our show on the road without ever standing up. That was before I spent most of my money on a bad haircut and the rest on a slot machine to practice for my trip to Las Vegas and healthcare. The high school bleachers emptied out after the game while clouds of pale moths swarmed the stadium lights, entire treads flattened patches of grass. Mostly we're buying time, but the costs are extinction. Meth makes the edges hard and cold, and the cinnamon gum is starting to lose its flavor, but in the rich man's house, I don't have anywhere else to spit it. Some said it was the best hoagie in Philly, but I only licked the wrapper, then pulled my chair up close to the screen. The cling is a rush of dopamine as the sun shines down on the bodies, or we sleep in our car by the airport, although it's not as if we've got anywhere to go, with a pocket full of loose change and miniature Snickers. That one makes me sick. The sky widens where it clears as geese migrate along its periphery, and the road bumps into a mountain. The road is called Vision, and the mountain is a grave. We leave the best part to the snow, then build a temporary shelter in the desert where swallows nest in the eaves, or maybe they're bats. It's hard to tell in the darkness, which makes other things so clear. The heart won't open without the lungs won't open without the breath. The dog sheds all over the furniture, and so do we. Everywhere I look, I find our remains. The earth is thick with what's come before, frequently with a blade or bullet lodged in it. During an ice age, it's not the freeze that kills you when the executioners are usually hiding in plain sight. The wheel spins in place until it becomes the place, yet the hole keeps getting deeper until water begins to fill it, making my bottom muddy, my inner ear gummed. And sometimes the wheel won't go, or goes so slow. At least that's what the pharmacist told me while stuck in Chicago during the fireworks. The prescription left my liver intact, but not my wallet or the RV's mini fridge wedged beneath the windshield. Thunder rumbles in the distance, this tune of Here It Comes. But don't worry, I'm holding on for now. I've got hope and biscuits, although nothing to dunk them in except an oil spill. It is happening again. It's always the fall of America. It's like clicking on a link inside your head, although that won't fix this toothache after my dentist canceled my appointment because I couldn't stop chattering. There's meat for Easter. We might win for the most diversions, the most unnecessary bathroom breaks at work. Tell me more while we rubberneck from our seats. It's Ernst with an A, not the one who went to camp during a summer so still it became its own shadow before shaking like a chihuahua at the liquor store. That's bad behavior, but I can relate after giving away most of my information. We have squandered an abundance and known indiscriminate slaughter. Sound and light filter through glass, forming a panorama of genocide and enslavement. Even the children can't talk freely, live in fear of their parents' rage as a train speeds through the night in our dreams. Cash and carry, guns and ammo, porn. A roadside shrine marks the spot of the crash. I almost made it. There's a competition at the fire station to see who can own the biggest pickup truck, but you've got to be a bit fearless to run into the flames to take these broken wings. Musicals scrub history of its disease, but I'm not hummus. Instead, I got down on my knees and smoothed the dirt with my hands. Bees love other bees. The body at rest is still fitful. Thank you. Wow. Do I move these? Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So again, this is a longer essay around a particular book that was recently republished in translation by the French writer Claude Rankine. I've kind of taken out the discussion of the book because for our purposes I thought it might be more interesting to look at the photographs that Rankine made and also to really kind of discuss and be kind of slightly in awe of the anti-Nazi propaganda campaign that she carried out with her stepsister, partner, lover, artistic collaborator on the Isle of Jersey during the Nazi occupation during World War II. So that's the focus here. It's just a few pages and some visuals. These are all quotes from the book that will flash up here when I'm reading Rankhine's words. Although Nazi Germany had dreams of invading, do we need to take a breath or everything? We're good, right? With the transition? We're good. Okay. I mean, I do not a break. Like, don't wander off. But we're abrupt. Okay, we're good. Although Nazi Germany had dreams of invading and conquering England, the closest it ever got was occupying the Channel Islands, a collection of small archipelagos in the English Channel that are closer to the French mainland near Normandy than they are to the English coast. Not officially part of the United Kingdom, they are nevertheless crown dependencies and overseen by England since the 14th century. Perhaps historically known as a favored destination of English and French royalists, tax evaders, as well as political exiles such as Victor Hugo, the largest of the Channel Islands is Jersey, which in 1939 had more than 50,000 inhabitants. At the beginning of World War II, Nazi Germany's military made elaborate plans to invade the Channel Islands, including the coordination of air, sea, and land forces, but England had left them undefended, and after the bombing of a few ports and relatively minimal casualties, the territory was quickly conquered at the end of June 1940, with Jersey officially falling under Nazi rule on July 1st. The French writers, artists, stepsisters, partners, and lovers, Claude Cahun and Marcel Moore, observed this Nazi occupation from their house on the Isle of Jersey, where they had moved from Paris in 1937, hoping to escape political turmoil and swelling anti-Semitism in the years leading up to World War II. Cahun, who was Jewish, was born Lucy Schwab in 1894 to a prominent literary family, and Moore was born Suzanne Malherbe in 1892. Teenage friends and possibly intimates before their respectively widowed parents married each other and they became stepsisters, they adopted their gender-fluid pseudonyms before arriving in Paris circa 1920. This use of pseudonyms would be among the first of many performances of self and identity for which Cahun and Moore would become recognized before being forgotten after their deaths, and then attract attention again in the 1990s for their groundbreaking approach to photographic portraiture and montage. They were also equally inventive as well as prolific in their production and distribution of anti-Nazi propaganda on Jersey during World War II. Nothing is more hypocritical than the truth, Cahun writes in canceled confessions or disavowals, recently published in translation by Seavey Press in an edition that aims to approximate the original graphic design of Aveu non Avenu, including its front and back covers, as well as the individual stars, eyes, and lips that separate subsections within the book's 9 parts. A mirror is not a self, as Narcissus fatally learned, neither is a self-portrait, as Cahun shows in her writerly and photographic versions. And a confession isn't a self either, as the very title of Cahun's work indicates. Excuse my French. Aveu? You say it, just shout it out. Aveu. Avowals, non-avenue. Avenue. Null or voided. One of multiple ways of translating this, I'm sure, for the people in the front row translating French. But they aren't voided because they aren't true. They are voided because truth is socially constructed and frequently imposed, and Cahun seeks to undermine repressive social constructs wherever and however possible, whether via text, image, performance, fashion, etc. Canceled Confessions most literally starts with invisibility. Following the dates 1919 to 1925, a first collage featuring a single eye magnified through a glass globe and signed More at the bottom, the opening line is "The Invisible Adventure." For Cahun, invisibility is less a disappearance and more a refusal of assimilation, first and foremost into a heterosexual order, and an escape from homogeneity of all sorts. This flexibility and indeterminacy are deeply threatening to the dominant ruling ideologies that seek to fix, frame, and absorb subjects into their hierarchical and inequitable structures. Knowledge as a form of power locates and categorizes, and in the regime of hypercapitalism, every location and category is potentially or already monetized. As part of her response to being accused of writing in an indeterminate genre, Cahun responds, but faced with unlabeled products, they become completely disorientated. This is the collage montage that opens the book that I mentioned. Yeah, that's good. Sorry about that. So it's really the collages, the photographs, that kind of what brought her back into circulation in the 90s. So I wanted to have that montage up there. As part of her response to being accused of writing in an indeterminate genre, which maybe some of you do, Cahoon responds, but faced with unlabeled products, they become completely disorientated. A sticker is obligatory. This sticker is simultaneously a description, a container, and a price tag. Cahoon's work anticipates the self transformed into commodity and subjectivity being made synonymous with entrepreneurship, especially within digital economies. In a world in which how the subject is seen and by whom has become a crucial concern on all parts of the socio-political continuum, Cahoon was already trying to elude the surveillance capitalism net, which 100 years later is becoming increasingly ubiquitous. I have spent 33 years of my life wishing passionately, blindly, that things would be other than they are. I've acquired little more than fictional values. I don't know what bill is due today, but I can feel it, Cahoon writes at the beginning of the final short section of Disavowals or Canceled Confessions, which was added in 1928 after completing the bulk of the book from 1919 to 1925. In the late 1920s, Cahoon had already shifted her attention from writing to photography, which she had first explored in the mid-1910s before moving to Paris. Her most staged, stylized, and gender-playful photographs were taken from 1927 to 1929, which was also when Cahoon and Moore were involved in Parisian avant-garde theater. These self-portraits include a series in which Cahoon holds fake barbells and poses with short hair, hearts drawn on her cheeks, pursed and painted lips, false eyelashes, while wearing a white shirt on which the phrase, "I am in training, don't kiss me," is written in English between fake nipples attached to her shirt. In another series, she sits cross-legged in a Buddhist pose with an affixed bindi or third eye while wearing strings of long beads and a skull cap. Another photo obscures Cahoon's whole face with a female mask and her body with a black cloak covered in white and black eye masks. The single image, "What Do You Want From Me?" superimposes two photographs of Cahoon's nearly shaved head and thin neck and shoulders in a way that uncannily and frighteningly echoes pictures from liberated concentration camps a decade and a half later. The title's question, as with so much writing in Canceled Confessions, would seem to be directed as much toward the self as to an other, and the photograph's composition echoes this. In Canceled Confessions, she writes, "Life's role is to leave me uncompleted, allowing me only freeze frames," and the approximately 500 photographs that Cahoon and Moore took over the course of more than 4 decades are a literal embodiment of this. These photos, for which Cahoon is most famous, intentionally confuse gender categories as well as what might be human, a category that in Western Europe was formulated during the early modern era with its roots in slavery and colonial encounters alongside the initial stirrings of a capitalist bourgeoisie. Within this context, the human became equated with propertied, white, European males, and the rest of the globe organized accordingly in varying degrees of distance from this idea of what is human. In 1937, Cahoon and Moore decided to leave Paris for the Isle of Jersey, with fascism firmly entrenched across Europe. Cahoon had visited Jersey with her family as a child, and she and Moore vacationed there as adults. They also both died there. Cahoon in 1954 from a kidney tumor while in the midst of planning a move back to Paris, and Moore from an overdose of sedatives in 1972. Fascism seeks to make visible. Torchlight spectacles and cathedrals of light are festivals of illumination. Fundamentally against otherness, fascism wants everything discernible, the better to decide and distinguish what does not conform to the strict social organization of its ethno-nationalism. Fascism arrives when policies are no longer deliberated by elected representatives, and security forces operate in broad daylight. In Europe during Cahoon's time, the others of fascism were primarily communists and Jews, which in turn were frequently conflated, but the Nazis also sought to eradicate the disabled, the Romani, and homosexuals. Cahoon's writing and art are acts of transmutation as a form of subterfuge and invisibility, partly as anti-fascist and against the workings of power in general, and partly as the creation of new and alternative subjectivities. Cahoon strained against conventional ideas of the subject, and certainly against the notion of the individual to rethink concepts and processes of relation. Cahoon's engagement with invisibility and visibility, masking and exposure, imaginative writing, radical politics, avant-garde theater, personas, montage, and design culminated in her and Moore's production of anti-Nazi propaganda on the Isle of Jersey during World War II after they refused to evacuate with thousands of other residents when it became clear that Germany would invade. As she wrote, after the war, in an unpublished remembrance that might also partly describe her approach in Canceled Confessions, we fought for a rainbow of values stretching from the ultra-romantic black to the flaming red. We fought for the Germans against Nazi Germany. We fought as surrealist writers with weapons of chance. After the war, Cahoon claimed that she and Moore produced more than 2,000 pieces of anti-Nazi resistance. And when they were finally caught in the summer of 1944, the Nazi authorities had collected at least 350 of them as evidence when they brought Cahoon and Moore to trial that fall and sentenced them to death, a sentence commuted a few months later. Like the elusive subject and identity of Canceled Confessions, many of these pieces were signed "The Soldier with No Name" to give the illusion that they were being produced by a disgruntled German soldier. Moore's fluency in German made the project all that more convincing and was part of a lifetime of her helping Cahoon translate her radical ideas into reality. Performing normality, Cahoon and Moore would walk around during the day and night or take the bus to various parts of the island to distribute their anti-Nazi propaganda. These included typed and handwritten pamphlets, posters, photo montages, a fake newspaper, jokes, translated BBC reports, drawings, cartoons, poems, and more urging German soldiers to disobey and desert. They reworked the text and images of German magazines and slipped them back into circulation. No genre or medium was off limits. Fake crosses were put in a German cemetery and a large banner installed above a church altar. Slogans were etched into coins and written on paper currency. Their approach was not ominous threats, but rather an attempt to reach those soldiers with doubts about Hitler or the war. And judging from the ones Cahoon and Moore later met during their imprisonment, their anti-war campaign seems to have had a degree of success. Cahoon was bold enough to slip notes into the pockets of soldiers or leave them at their houses, but the majority were left in the open. Some were placed in packets of cigarettes. Cahoon and Moore used cigarette rolling paper to write many of their notes and slogans, and they suspected it was the woman who sold them the papers who eventually betrayed them to the Nazis in charge, who at first had trouble believing that this widespread resistance campaign was conducted by two middle-aged, middle-class women. In a later self-portrait from May 1945, the month she and Moore were freed from prison and Jersey liberated, Cahoon stands with her hands in her pants pockets while wearing a pale trench coat, a scarf over her hair, and clenching a Nazi eagle insignia between her front teeth. She and Moore had survived 2 world wars, fascism, anti-Semitism, suicide attempts, and a death sentence, and this was a rare moment of triumph in her work that otherwise sought to undermine the hierarchies and exclusions embedded in the very idea of victory. To rest in achievement was anathema to Cahoon's disposition, which is partly why she disappeared from history. Here am I, innocent, a jobless virgin, a queen on strike, voluntarily unemployed, marginalized, and, as they say, outlawed from society. But her artistic breakthroughs and freedoms continue to be rediscovered including the addition of canceled confessions to the important works of literary modernism, as well as its relevance to 21st century reimaginings of the self and its complex and fluid interrelations with others. And I'll just close with a poem, because the poems in this book are thank you, all more than about 5 years old. You know, as you will discover, as you publish books, it takes a couple of years for a book to get accepted, and then a couple of years for a book to get produced. So I thought I would just read something very new, written in the past couple of weeks, certainly since the war in Iran started. It's just a page. Butterfly Effect. We are closed for business, but open for other stuff. Yet when I finally got on stage, I forgot my lines, and by then it was too late. So let's try it backward the way Mum does, except it still turns out the same. I don't feel right. Something cracked inside of me. Amateur wrestlers practice pile drivers on a mattress while we sing happy birthday with the soiled words because there are so many distractions or terrors on a clock face, although mine occasionally intones cuckoo, not 70s rock at the yacht club or cumbia and a cat at the bodega, although on no fancy feast. We wouldn't have it otherwise, as nerve endings tingle in the extremities and in the baby's ears recently pierced at Claire's boutique. A dog walker keeps the leashes untangled in the parking lot outside the pawn shop where we sold most of our jewelry, although not the locket or the spare set of teeth because dinner is unfair. Everything in the air is also in our lungs, but soon someone will own that too, just as there's no scarecrow needed for the monocrops and the bugs get bored of eating all that corn growing between rest stops in Iowa where the big trucks idle and the breeze sends a frisbee back onto the interstate. Mickey Mouse steers the cargo ship filled with sugar as we run out of hay to feed the horses or take Zelda on a quest to collect acorns, even if I now have to prove I'm a human right when the machines are taking over. We used to be sad on Sundays, except I don't ever want to sleep. I'm becoming an algorithm. I'm already compost. An electric fan makes the flag flap indoors for the workers to salute on their trek to the cubicles. I wasn't proud of that or the front car seat covered in Arby's wrappers and empty Monster Energy cans, but in outer space, it's a long way between dumpsters and sunsets. Besides, we have to sit with our messes. I'm done talking to the adults after they sent me to my room. More bombs launched at civilians, more wars fought in the home. I know somebody who knows somebody, but we still have to make it over the fence. Knots in the rope can be used for climbing while pausing for the police to pass as they search for the burner phone, then bring the canine team to the kindergarten class. Instead, we took another route to the afters, or patiently wait for whatever happens. Our suitcases are packed. I don't know how it ends. For now, the clouds continue to mend. Thank you. We can take questions if you want, but we don't have to. Or we can take them in front, but if anyone has a larger question you want to ask.
You said that we could talk about modern ethics if we wanted to.
Yeah, yes, we could. I mean, I resisted calling it an epic poem for years because it seemed pretentious and heavy-handed in a way, but then I just kind of decided that that's what it probably is in a way. I mean, if you think about different epics, whether, you know, Homer's Odyssey, I'm not comparing myself to these people, I'm talking about the genre. Homer's Odyssey, Dante's Inferno, Melvin Tolson's Harlem Nights, Anne Waldman's Jovis, trilogy, which is probably the most recent one. Brenda Hillman is currently working on two. Brenda Hillman read here. Maybe that name registered. She's actually working on two simultaneous epics right now at the same time. She wrote one that's completed on the four elements, and now she's writing another one on time. So, there are modern examples. I think of them as archives, and I think, probably there is an archival component to what you heard in terms of all the things it's trying to bring into the poems. I think of it more traditionally as a figure moving through a landscape. So, you think of Dante moving through the Divine Comedy. So, I think in our 21st century, our sense of the subject is very different than maybe the coherence of Dante's subject or more recent subjects. And I think of it as a kind of investigation of place. Most epics investigate some kind of place, so to speak. And the place I'm trying to investigate is early 21st century United States, both on and off lines. I mean, this would not exist in the form it exists in without it being able to move fluidly between virtual and real worlds. A lot of the things that I reference are things I've seen online. The reading group was very generously reading this book on Sunday night, and they were reading a poem that has a reference to Home Alone. I've actually never seen Home Alone. That's not the right generation for me. But it's in the poem, it worked well. Not worked well, it worked in the poem. I could put it in the poem. So that doesn't exist. Sure, you read about Home Alone in newspapers or something like that, but it's more the fluidity of kind of our moving in and out of digital and real worlds that kind of allows. That's the landscape I'm investigating. It's not just the physical landscape of United States at this moment. The question then becomes what do I not put in? That becomes interesting to think about. And also, I think for any of us writers, anyone writing, even writing a short story, what comes into the story, what do you keep out of the story? Why do you keep something out of the story? Why do you put something in? And so that as I'm working on this, I kind of make those decisions too. I want to include as much as I can, but I don't think the name Trump will ever appear in this book. But I don't know that. Yeah. So those kind of things are decisions that get made. Yes, please. Yeah, it's assembled word by word and phrase by phrase, and then I smooth it out. It's very important to me that there's a flow to it. I'm very interested in the idea of interrelation of us as humans, interrelation of us with the larger world, interrelation of us with social structures. So I'm trying to create, as Elle so beautifully and brilliantly said in the introduction, I'm trying to create a poem of deep interrelation. Most of the transitions are somewhat false and artificial. There's lots of but, there's lots of but in this poem. It's like one thing but this other thing. So there's a lot of kind of ways in which I join things up, but they're not joined up in any kind of logical way. But the way we experience reality a lot of times is not logical, right? Whether we're scrolling on our phones or just moving through the world, or listening to what's going on in the larger world, it's not syncing up in a certain way. But I write prose very quickly, and I write poetry very slowly. Yeah, please. Thank you for the questions.
How do you go about using translation as a way of connectivity, especially with an audience that may not know whoever you're talking about?
Well, I will, translation? Translating cultural references or more literally translation?
I would guess in general, but yeah, like specifically she's like translating very cultural nuances
right.
and how to still try to connect them to another kind of audience.
Yeah. I mean, I see the cultural references as little entry points for different readers. So even in this last poem, like, you know, combining cumbia and 70s yacht rock, like, you know, different readers will recognize that differently based on cultural, social backgrounds. I don't presume in the slightest to be able to kind of like engage all readers, but they're meant to be little entry points, little flashes of recognition where someone connects with a cultural reference in a way. I try to mix them up generationally as well. Again, in the poem that they were reading for the reading group, there was a Death Star Trench reference, a Home Alone reference, and a Joe Namath reference. So probably different people in the audience immediately connected with one of those three. I mean, it's not a major component of the work. I don't start a poem with that, but I try to sprinkle that into the work in a way, and make sure that they're different kinds. That's the whole question of like what comes in and what doesn't come in. And some things are not necessarily appropriate for me to include in a poem. And I wouldn't do that. But I'm trying to see how big the net can be in a way. But there's a history of that with the New York School of Poets, and plenty of poets kind of working with contemporary cultural references, commodity references, and things like that. Yeah, you do translate it, but we do that as readers with any text. We're always interpreting it based on this set of kind of cultural backgrounds, knowledges, experiences that we have. That's the beauty of reading.
Are you ready
Yeah.
for another? Yeah.
Yeah.
Question, maybe some writing advice, if you don't mind. I really like in your work, there's a room in the poems for Arby's wrappers on the seat, and Monster Energy cans and chain restaurants, Bud Ruckers is mentioned, and Frogger, like these kind of low culture signifiers.
Yeah.
It's high culture, and I like how you use them because they seem a real part of the work and not condescending to.
Yeah.
I feel like when a lot of writers use those kind of low culture, mass-produced signifiers, there's a condescension there, which you don't do, and I really admire. I wonder if you can maybe give us some advice on working in those objects into our work.
Yeah.
Because it really is like, whether we like it or not, like the Monster Energy can is the texture of contemporary American life. So
It's only in there because for some, maybe your own feeds have been this way. Monster Energy memes have just exploded in my feed. There isn't, in a certain way, there's just a looseness to it. It could be, could kind of be anything. So that's a serious answer to your question, though, is like, it's not condescending because it's not putting them there with a kind of like purpose. It doesn't have to be Monster Energy cans. In fact, if I were to have written that poem a month from now, it would probably have been whatever thing was in my feed at the time. The granny killed by a bazooka. It won't end up in a poem, but it's one of those things that we all saw for like 2 weeks, right? That's what I'm trying to reckon with. But to specifically answer your question, it's because I'm not kind of placing them there in like a purposeful sense in a weird way. the whole range of them are there purposefully because it's the world we move through. But the individual references are not purposeful and frequently will be chosen for their sound, simply for their sound quality. That whole passage in Splashes and Plops about hippie, that whole thing is all a series of long E sounds. The decisions in those 2 or 3 lines were all made almost purely on sound. It didn't have to be a Subaru. Whatever car matched with whatever sound patterning is going on in that word is what I would have chosen. I mean, I could look at it and figure it out. But a lot of times I make decisions based on sound, the kind of rhythm of the line. So Arby's, I think Arby's sounded good in that stanza by the lines surrounding it. Also, I have a lot of references to McDonald's, so I wanted something other than McDonald's. So that was part of the decision for Arby's. I had to Google to see if Arby's still existed. Oh, sorry. I mean, I used to eat Arby's. They have that 5 for $5 thing, or I don't know if they still have that. Monica knows. This is before I stopped eating red meat, but 5 roast beef sandwiches for $5. That was heaven. That was heaven for like an undergraduate with no money. But the Arby's was chosen because it wasn't McDonald's. Then I had to Google it to see if it even still existed. So there's not a lot of charge in that stuff, and there shouldn't be, because that stuff isn't charged. It's ephemeral, and it goes into a landfill, and some of it seeps into the oceans, right? So it's kind of everywhere. But thank you. Yeah, it's kind of a major part of what I'm trying to do. So I appreciate you asking that question.
Hello, you might recognize me.
Yeah.
Ate lunch with you today.
Yeah,
It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I also was at your book club on Monday, and while we were reading the poems, I read one that was called Untitled.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember exactly what it said, but it said something along the lines of, like, the human race is going into extinction. And I thought that was really fascinating, that you had one line for one poem called Untitled. Like, what did you think?
What were you
that?
thinking?
Yeah, what were you thinking? I mean, in a good way. It was really fascinating to me.
No, I have a found poem in here. It's 4 lines. I took it out of I was doing laundry at the laundromat, and I took a 4-line advertisement for a room for rent out of the Penny Saver. And like so many people wrote me and like, I love that poem so much. I'm like, thanks a lot. It's like the only poem I didn't write in the entire book. We are on the verge of extinction. It's a 1-line poem. I mean, you know, I'm playing with different forms. I'm trying not to repeat forms. I do different kinds of forms throughout the book. And I probably just thought I'll try a 1-line poem. Maybe in the next edition it'll go out because maybe it didn't seem like it was successful. With each edition, or with these 2 at least, to see if another one gets published. I took out poems from the first edition, revised poems. So, I was just trying a 1-line poem. That's all.
Is there a reason why it's called Untitled?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I wanted to really dehumanize it, basically. If you're talking about extinction, then why, we're going to erase. And I have a title. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
I was just curious, what 70s yacht rock bands are your favorite?
Don't take it too seriously. I mean, as a young person, I had a soft spot for Christopher Cross. That's a little late for yacht rock, right? Isn't he kind of early 80s? But he's very yacht rockish, right? Yeah. Yeah. Christopher Cross is my favorite yacht rock act. We have a lot of this stuff I just pull from life. We have friends who live next to a yacht club, and on Saturday afternoons we can hear yacht rock from the yacht club. I mean, I know some of this stuff sounds kind of grandiose and big and stuff like that, but a lot of it is just very simple. Like, I heard yacht rock at the yacht club, so I put it in a poem. And a lot of it's right that way. Nonfiction, fiction. It's not just me and poetry. Like, you make those decisions about how deeply embedded and granular. And Joyce is there is no more deeply embedded, granular book in a certain way, from a certain angle, than Ulysses, a book that takes place over the course of 24 hours, that you can map literally kind of block by block through the entire thing. All the stores are real. Every store he mentions, every product he mentions is real. So that wasn't like a random kind of association to kind of mention Ulysses, because that's a super granular book. I think as writers, that's one of the things we wrestle with is that kind of granularity. And not everyone wants to do it, and that's totally fine. Thank you. Is it 8:15? Is that the actual time? Probably good, right? We'll be out front a little bit. So thank you all so very, very, very much.
We walked back to the back to sign books. And I want to end with this announcement about, if you haven't heard, the Writers Institute Club, led by Sydney Howard, Jules Marsliff, and Ashton Hall, is sponsoring a student choice reader for the Seavey reading series next year. And there's a vote to rank the top 5 names selected in a survey last fall, and every student at the university is eligible to vote. So you can find the QR code on posters hanging around campus, and we really want you to vote because we want to try to bring someone here that you've selected. So thank you so much, and I'll see you out in the hall with Alan as he signs your books. Thank you so much.